Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI, standards. We're going to break down how organizations can cut through the noise and really focus their sustainability reporting on what truly matters.
So let's just jump right in. Think about it. A single company can have this massive footprint on the economy, the environment, and of course on people. With literally hundreds of potential impacts, how on earth do they decide what's important enough to report on in a way that's actually credible and, meaningful?
Well, thankfully, the GRI standards give us a really clear four-step map to follow. Now, all these steps are important, for sure, but today we're going to zero in on the two that are absolutely critical for making the tough decisions. Step 3, which is all about assessing how significant your impacts are, and Step 4, which is about prioritizing them for your final report. All right, let's get into Step 3. So picture this. You've done the work, and now you have this huge, long list of your company's impacts, things that have happened and things that could happen. It's just not realistic to tackle all of them at once, right? That's where this system comes in, to help you figure out which ones are truly the most significant.
And this isn't about guesswork or just picking what feels right. No, it's a really structured process. It combines the hard numbers, your quantitative data, with the story and context behind them, the qualitative side of things. Blending those two is what gives you a sharp, clear picture of which impacts are the most critical and need your attention right now.
Now, here's a really important distinction that GRI makes, so lean in for this one. When we're talking about negative impacts that have already happened, actual impacts, their significance is all about their severity. But for impacts that are just potential, well, you have to look at two things: how severe they could be and the likelihood that they'll actually happen. It's a subtle but crucial difference.
So that leads to the obvious question. What exactly does severity mean here? It's not just one thing. GRI actually breaks it down into 3 distinct characteristics. You have to look at all of them together to really understand the full weight of an impact.
First up is scale. This basically asks, how grave is this impact? And context is everything here. An impact scale is considered way bigger if it involves something like a human rights violation, or if it happens in a really vulnerable place, like a company using tons of water in a region that's already facing a drought. Next, we've got scope. This is all about how widespread the impact is. How far do the ripples travel? Are we talking about affecting a handful of people or an entire community? A small patch of land or a whole ecosystem? You get the idea. The more widespread, the more severe. And finally, there's what's called its irremediable character. This one's a big deal because some damage just can't be undone. The question you have to ask is, can this harm be fixed? If an impact is irreversible, like say wiping out a species or destroying a sacred site, then its severity is by definition incredibly high. And this brings us to a hard and fast rule in the GRI standards. When you're looking at potential negative impacts on human rights, the severity of that harm always takes precedence over its likelihood. This is so important. It means that even if there's a tiny 1 in a million chance of something terrible happening to people, if the potential harm is severe, you have to treat it as a priority. No excuses.
Okay, deep breath. You've systematically gone through and assessed the significance of all your impacts. That brings us to Step 4, prioritizing. This is where the rubber meets the road. You take that detailed assessment and use it to make the final cut on which topics are important enough to make it into your public report.
The main goal here is pretty simple. It's all about ranking. You're going to take your whole list of assessed impacts and just line them up, from the most significant right at the top down to the least significant at the bottom. This ranking process is what brings real clarity and helps you focus.
A really practical way to do this is to put some numbers to it. Using a simple scoring system, like, say, a scale of 0 to 5 for each of those characteristics we talked about, scale, scope, and irremediable character, that can add some real structure and objectivity to your evaluation. It makes the whole process less about gut feelings and more about data.
So once you've got your ranked list, the organization has to make a really important decision. You need to set a clear threshold, a cutoff point. You have to draw a line in the sand. Every single impact that falls above that line is now officially considered a material topic that you're committing to report on.
So if we just break that down, it's a pretty clear 3-part process. First, you rank your impacts using that significance assessment. Second, you set that all-important threshold. And third, you take everything above the line and start to group them into logical, cohesive topics.
This last step, the grouping part, is so key for making your report easy to understand. Instead of reporting on a dozen different little impacts, you can combine related ones. So, for example, things like water pollution and community access to water can be neatly bundled under one big material topic like water and effluence. It just tells a much clearer and more powerful story.
So, after all that, you might be wondering, why go through all this trouble? What's the real value of such a structured approach, both for the company and for anyone who reads their reports?
Well, here's the bottom line. This structured process is what transforms sustainability reporting from just a box-ticking exercise into a genuinely powerful strategic tool. It forces an organization to focus on what actually matters. And when you do that, you create real transparency, you build trust with your stakeholders, you drive accountability inside the company, and you end up with reports that are not only credible, but truly meaningful.
And that leaves us with one final and, I think, crucial question. This whole process, it doesn't just produce a document. It gives you a clear, evidence-based picture of your biggest impacts on the world. So the real question is, once you have that clarity, what's your responsibility to actually do something about it? Thanks for watching The Explainer.